making master learning one day at a time. Hey, John Bergman. Hey, today or this week has been kind of a weird week. I live in Houston, Texas. Hurricane Nicholas came through, not huge damage, but we lived kind of with remote learning for a couple of days. So trying to keep kids on track has been a struggle. Something I've been thinking about that really seems to I need to do is some of my students, let's say, don't have a great amount of urgency to get stuff done. I think part of that is the fact that since they have a little bit more flexibility in a mastery learning classroom, some of their classes don't have that flexibility. And so they are choosing, I guess maybe I would make the same choice, they're choosing to prioritize other classes other than their chemistry or their physics class. And I need to find a way to create some urgency. Now, I teach at a high-performing high school, and grades matter to my students, even though I teach if you call the students on the lower end of our spectrum here at the school. But I want to make sure that I create some urgency. So I'm thinking of some new ways to create some urgency in a mastery classroom when students are choosing to not get the stuff done. One thing I will do is I'm going to be sending some communications home to parents, and fortunately in my community the parents are very responsive, and that usually gets a lot of stuff done. But I may have to create some sort of penalties. Grades matter to the kids, and I hate to penalize with grades, but if they're not keeping up, that's the issue. They are doing things in the class, but there is expectation to do things outside of class, and many of them are choosing to not do those things outside of class. They are learning well. It's going well when they're in the class, but to keep up with the pace that is expected here, that I expect of them actually, is they have to do some extra work. And the students who struggle, of course, are the students who need extra help. These are the students where a chemistry or physics class is very difficult. So I'm thinking of some new ways to create some urgency for my students. Number one, I'm going to actually kind of create some kind of a late penalty. I hate to do that, to say if they haven't done X by Y time, then there is, I actually have some penalties, but what I need to do is create some more stringent penalties so that they kind of wake up. Because honestly, I still have like a few kids, just a few, who still haven't passed, if you will, mastered the first level. We're already in the second level. We're soon to finish the second level, and students have started the second level, and it's related to the first level, so they have to keep working. Anyways, that's something that I'm learning. One thing I am going to do, especially to continue to make sure they understand previous content, is that in the summative assessments, I'm going to have questions from the previous summative assessments that keep circling back on the key principles, because there are certain things they have to keep knowing and knowing and knowing. I got to make sure that they get that. So it's been an interesting week here in the mastery learning classroom, and I still have a lot to learn. Yeah. It's been an interesting week, just to say the least. One other thing, an interesting story that just happened literally a few minutes ago. I'm standing here in my classroom, and in my classroom, I try to do, in my chemistry classrooms, a demonstration every day. And I've got one set up behind me for today's experiment, but the one that I did yesterday and the day before was kind of an interesting thought experiment. And 3 young ladies just walked into the room right before school, and they brought a friend. 2 of them were my students and 1 was not. And they said, "You want to see this really cool thing?" And then it's this bottle that you shake it, and then these beads float, and then it's like this discrepant event. It's like, this doesn't make sense. And then she explained it. One of the students explained it to the non-student, said, "Let me explain how this happened." And she did an amazing job explaining how things work. And so there is, at the beginning of my class, I'm doing it teacher-centered time. And that teacher-centered time is where I do cool demos, I call them, demonstrations of scientific phenomena that are usually unsafe for them to do themselves. And then I have them draw it in their interactive notebooks. And when they draw it in their interactive notebooks, they then have to take a few minutes to just process and explain why what happened. And I'll assess those on their summative assessments at a later point. But it's explaining scientific phenomena that, especially this discrepant events, the ones that don't make sense, that are super cool. So anyways, that's something that's really working. So if you think that it's always their own pace, the demonstrations happen at the appropriate time. Sometimes, frankly, I force them. I'll say, well, here's something that we're going to learn about later, but they see something interesting and sciencey. So for example, right now we're studying sort of the math part of the science. And I want to make sure they understand the science part of the science too. And I want to make sure that there's a kind of a reward. As we learn the math that we're going to apply to the science a little bit later, I want them to see the science and see, honestly, I want them to see that the natural world is an amazing place. And as we study it, we just get a chance to, it's awesome, it's wonderful. And to see that is, I want to inspire that curiosity and that awe of our natural world. And hopefully that's happening, especially through these demonstrations. Anyways, lots of active learning here happening in the Mastery Learning Classroom. I encourage you to subscribe, share. Yeah, John Bergman out.